Welcome to the SporeSwaps Podcast, episode 19. I'm Controlled Chaos. I'm your host. Today I'm here with Two Buds, One Shroom podcast host, Tim. And we're going to talk to you a little bit today about Tim's journey and mental health and alternative medicine and all the fun stuff. But I wanted to thank you guys for tuning in today. For anybody who hasn't already subscribed to our channel, hit that subscribe button, hit the bell if you want to get notified of new content. If you're trying to pivot away from Facebook, you can find us on Reddit. So check out SporeSwaps on Reddit because we got a bunch of new media there since the picture ban. And if you make a purchase, subscribe to our newsletter because we got a lot of really great deals on there. So just wanted to shout that out real quick. Tim, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. How about you, man?
I'm doing well. So I just wanted to start off today kind of talking about yourself, tell our listeners who you are, and, a little bit about your background, your story, your journey, and how you got to the Two Buds, One Shroom project.
Oh, yeah. So I'm a lot to unpack. So I'm a 38-year-old guy. I live down here in the Southeast. And, I was in the finance world really since I got out of school. And my journey's been really interesting because I was an extrovert when I was in school. And then in my mid 20s, that started to change, and it changed for several valid reasons. And one of them was, I suffered the loss of a girl that I really liked. She passed away from cancer. And that was like my first real loss that I really ever had gone through. And what was happening was like these gray clouds started to kind of move into my life. And then the next thing it's like a decade kind of had passed by, and I was just like a different person than what I knew myself to be, and my sleep quality sucked, and like the highlights in life weren't as bright as they used to be. My energy was low. My overall general mood was low. I just had a bunch of stuff going on. And then when my dad had a surgery that went wrong. And he basically became a patient within the family. And he went through a lot of challenge himself. But going through all that stress, that was my crash. That's what led to my body going through a lot. And there's some science reasons as to why, and I can shed some light on them. But basically, it led me to starting Two Buds, One Shroom, which is a project. Basically, it's a perspective. It's like a patient perspective on mental health stuff. I'm obviously not a doctor, but I held out on going the psychiatric, prescription route, and I'm glad that I did, because I found out the chemical reasons inside my body is like what was actually going wrong and causing my anxiety and my depression that I had. And once I fixed it, I had like 50 symptoms of things I experienced that I didn't know I was experiencing. And it was just it was like a whole new life was created for me. So that's kind of what the project's about, is kind of getting that awareness out there.
Okay. So you kind of noted that, you experienced loss and a decade of time had passed. Is that the correct chronology?
Yeah. So that was when I was 25 when she passed away. And then I spent, 5 years kind of dealing with that loss. And then now I'm a 38-year-old guy now. So between then, I stayed in the career, and I just was experiencing more and more of these symptoms. The symptoms were kind of getting louder. But yeah, that's kind of the chronology of things a little bit.
So what do you think was like the thing that kind of offset you pursuing, I guess, feeling better, getting better for such an extended period of time? What changed to make you want to pursue it in a different way? I guess
Well, I'll tell you, I kind of had to. And the reason why I had to is because my symptoms were just getting worse. Like my mood wasn't just like mostly low mood. It turned into low mood like all the time. The first thing when I would wake up in the morning was like the first thought in my head was just I feel awful. It felt like I was getting like ripped to into the world of waking up, and it almost stung. Like burning would wake like it would be like burning in the morning. That's just that waking up process was just rough. But I just basically acknowledged that I was feeling depressed, and my anxiety doing work throughout the day, like I had this weird anxiety where transitioning from task to task, it felt like I was just overcoming this wall. Um, and it was getting harder to kind of do the work. And I just reached that point where I'm like, I've got to fix whatever's going wrong in my life.
Yeah.
And I entered therapy, and I'll tell you, therapy was a start, but it did not solve things for me. But it was proof to me that week to week when I'd have therapy sessions, like there is just these unexplained moods that I would have. And I got to the place where I started Googling things like symptoms of multiple sclerosis and symptoms of bipolar. And
Okay.
like throughout all my 20s, by the way, I'd have these moods where I'd be down, and then I would be like fed up with feeling down, and I'd work my way out of it. And that would last for like a good month or two, and I would just crash. And
Yeah.
it felt like I was like a soft bipolar. That's what it felt like.
So, like from what you were saying, do you think that sometimes it maybe, like over analyzation, over inspection can almost like make you feel the way you're searching to find out about? So like I
And
can give you this. Yeah. So I can give you like this type of perspective, right? Like let's say you're you're doing a test, and the test is to prove that something is fast, right? And all you want to test is that if something is fast or not. Like, but then although that thing is fast, it may not be the most efficient and best way of doing it. Like, but all you were trying to prove is that it was fast, right? So then you don't actually get those pieces of the other thing. So like if you were to sit there and Google like, XYZ symptoms, and then you're reading like the symptoms of a particular syndrome, you're like, oh,
mhm.
that's exactly it. You know what I mean? Like they
Yeah,
nailed it. That's what I have. You know what I mean? And it makes you like make the like jump to these conclusions without any kind
right,
of like real evidence that that's actually what it is. So then you
right.
start going down paths and inspecting routes that may not necessarily be the right ones just
Be
because.
be applicable at all.
Yeah. So when you when you first started looking into the issues that you were having,
Mhm.
um, on a personal level, what was the conclusion that you came to before ever seeing a doctor? Was just that you were depressed?
Well, I had a bunch of just systems from like head to toe. I mean, I was losing hair. My muscles, like I just felt like I didn't like bending down, like muscles were just stiff. Obviously I mentioned sleep quality. Um, I mentioned the anxiety, the mood stuff, just mentally feeling down, and again that depression got worse. Um, I mean, I had a this just string of things happening within me. And um when I would read through those symptoms, I'm like, I feel like my body, like I feel like loss of strength, even coordination within my hands. I just felt like something was just off. And again, I
Mhm.
was worried that I felt like I was dying on a vine. And I'm just like, it's gotta be something like muscular skeletal, and I'm worried that it's a disease. And yeah, when you read some of that stuff, it's scary. And yeah, I never wanted to be the one that like would self-diagnose, and I've, learned that something like a serious disease like MS, like you can't self-assess that. You got to go through a process to rule it out. but I knew that something was just wrong from head to toe. And I'm like, I'm worried that it's not just depression.
Yeah. Yeah. I had kind of like reverse formatting stuff going on with me. Like I was experiencing physical stuff, but um, it was almost like my mental thought process behind it was just different. Like I felt my mood changing, but I knew that
Mhm.
it was because I was in pain physically. Like I made like the opposite
Right.
conclusion. You know what I mean? Like I was like, my
Mhm.
mood is being affected by my physical pain, and that made me, approach the thing that I needed to, from like, a physical perspective. And the more I dealt with the pain in my body, the better my mood became. And that's like,
Right.
not using painkillers or anything like that, just, going
Right.
through the appropriate channels, you know, doing stretches, like going to the chiropractor, going to a specialist, getting the proper, just like, the guidance that I needed to
Right.
like get my body on track, and that improved my mood. Um, but like when you said earlier that when you would wake up in the morning, it was hard to get up and there was like this burning feeling. Like, are you
Yeah.
talking about physically, or this was like a mental burn? Like, I don't want to
It
do
was
this.
al it was almost like a mental burn just from being, like, so tired. Have you ever been, like, so tired that when you wake up and, like, you're deep in sleep or something, but you wake up and your eyes just burn, and then you just have that feeling, it's almost in the back of your head and neck that you're just like, "Oh, I don't wanna get up." It's that.
Yeah, gotcha.
And then
So,
the other thing too is, like, like, every day was just such a they call it time blindness, right? Like, every hour that would pass by so fast. So, weeks would pass by fast, and, everything just felt like a blur, and it was a blur that I wasn't necessarily enjoying. I was just miserable. So, I just when I'd wake up, I got to the point where I felt so bad, it felt like there's nothing positive to wake up to.
no. Well, so what was the breaking point that put you in a doctor's office? Like, at what moment were you like, all right, I've had enough of feeling like this? Was there a definable moment, or, it was just like enough's enough and I'd put my hands in the air kind of thing?
Yeah, so the timeline, I went a little out of order to say the least. So,
Mm,
one, I was a little afraid to kinda go to the doctor and then not come back with, like, a clean bill of health. I've always wanted to have, like, good, clean medical records and, have things come back good. Because again, I was in the insurance industry. Um, and there's benefits of having none of this stuff on your record, so to speak. But what I did was, so I did therapy, and I learned from that process that I really need to go the next step and consider something like an antidepressant or something else. So I tried to get into a doctor's office
mm,
and to do a physical. But the thing is they were booked so far out that it couldn't come fast enough. They were like 6 months out to bring in a new patient.
yeah,
And I'm like, well, damn, I need something now.
yeah,
And what I did, and again, I was really looking for depression relief. So I kind of stumbled across a YouTube videos. It was Theo Vaughn, who's a comedian, talking about ketamine therapy. And then a light bulb went off in my head because it reminded me of a documentary that I saw, like, when my dad got sick. In fact, like, when my dad was in the ICU, I knew all of his medications that he was on, and one of them they had him on when to kinda sedate you, keep you in a medical coma, is ketamine. And I
mm,
came home from the ICU one day, and, it was a Vice documentary about ketamine therapy and how it could be used for depression, and I, like, plopped down on the couch and watched it, and I'm like, "Huh, that's interesting. I'll keep that in my head." Well, now it resurfaced because I was browsing on YouTube one day. So that got me hot on the trail of like, okay, well, if if that may be a solution for ketamine, like ketamine therapy be a solution for depression, I may want to try that. And I'd researched, and I have a specialist like 20 minutes up the road from me. So I set up a consult with him. And I'm glad that I did that. And when I got approved for the therapy and then got into his office, within 2 hours of that first treatment, it was like all those gray clouds blew out of my head.
Gotcha.
That
Interesting.
was life-changing.
Gotcha. So what does the process look like behind receiving authorization for ketamine therapy? Is it just a
So,
script?
no, the way it works, the type that I received, there's multiple types. There's some that you can do at home, but I did the IV ketamine therapy. So you basically have a consult with the doctor, and
Mhm.
they ask you a bunch of questions about history and what you're experiencing, and they just basically lay out your options. And I've always had an aversion for several reasons against doing traditional psychiatric medication because I was mainly concerned about the side effects. And again, I'm really a thorough and researched guy. So I know that quite often that when you get prescribed something, you're going to have side effects a lot of the time. And they commonly have to come back in and readjust medication or try something new. I didn't want to play that game. And I got on the guy's calendar. He asked me a bunch of questions. I said, I would like to move forward with this, please. Am I a candidate? Would you take me? And he's like, yeah, it sounds like this could, be an option for you. And I just said to myself, I'm like, okay, if I'm going to do this, I mean, one, I got to pay out of pocket and go to this guy's doctor's office. And, it's an hour basically of treatment. And then you got to
Okay.
hang out there for another hour afterward because you can't drive. And I'm like, if I'm going to have to go through this process and out of pocket all this stuff, then I'm going to take everything seriously and I'm going to really get my act together. So I got my supplements together. And then
Okay.
the morning I had like a routine the day before, and then a routine like the day of. And took my best shot, and I'm glad I did it that way.
Okay. So explain the benefit of the pre and post supplements. Like is that something that like they suggested? Is that something that you just kind
Uh-uh.
of defined for yourself? Okay, gotcha. Well,
So,
tell me what your thought process was behind that.
oh man, this is where it gets funny because I've always had, I've had these rolling periods in my life where I would be doing good sometimes and then I'd kind of just burn out. Well, I've the way it's worked historically for me is whenever I would be supplementing, I would be doing good. But someone that I trusted, they told me once upon a time that, hey, supplements and stuff just don't work. The standards for how they make them aren't that they're not the best and they really don't work. And it's just kind of a waste of your money. So I kind of had that floating in my head when, I was doing this thing, but I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to do the best I can to get my act together. Right. So I had some supplements that I had bought from years prior. And I'm just like, you know what? I'm going to just kind of take some. And I tried my best I could to choose what I took. I took like vitamin D, a probiotic. I had vitamin B12 and then something else. And I took that the morning of, went and down the road, got my treatment. And within, 2 hours, I started to feel really good. Like I was in that, what they call the ketamine honeymoon. But that's
Okay.
really all I knew at the time is I just had stuff from when I supplemented prior. And I tried to pick ones that could be related to mental health based upon loose research. And that's all I knew at the time.
Gotcha. So let me ask you like a little less of a professional question and more just a point of interest for myself. But so
Right.
on so like on the street, right? You know, when people can source non-scripted ketamine, whatever the case may be, I've heard it referred to as there being like the trippy kind and the dopey
Hmm.
kind. So like
Mm.
the medically administered IV ketamine, like how does it correlate to those two? Like, is it more of a hallucinogenic or is it like a dream state? Like, what is it? what does it feel like when you're receiving
Yeah.
treatment? Like, because I just don't know. Yeah.
All right. So me personally, I had a really positive experience with it, and it's going
Okay.
to affect people in different ways. And again, I didn't have a lot of what they call, like severe trauma or PTSD or anything. I think that those people that have that condition it may be a slightly different experience than I had. It was basically like, okay, so ketamine therapy is what I'm talking about here. It's it's an anesthetic that has psychedelic properties.
Okay.
So it's very much like a dream that you can kind of control. And I almost tell people that it's like swimming. You can swim from thought to thought. That's honestly how it feels. And it was so funny because I remember in that first session, I'm sitting, I'm a 36-year-old guy at the time sitting in the room, and I have this IV in my arm, and I'm just comfortable. I'm listening to music. I'm listening to the Johns Hopkins psychedelic, trip list. And I'm receiving this therapy, as I'd close my eyes, and I'm maybe like 10 minutes in at this point, I'm like floating over this Asian forest that's foggy, and I'm in a box of ice. Don't know why, but I'm in a box of ice, and it's peaceful and comfortable, and I'm enjoying the music. And then when I would open up my eyes and look around, I'm like, I'm just a guy in a room in this city here in this doctor's office. But the second I close my eyes again, I'm back in this ice box. And it's just funny because you still have your head like screwed on tight, like you're still very much with it, and you still have your morals and your principles and everything that's inside of you, but you're at the same time very much swimming from thought to thought, and you're seeing all sorts of visuals, and it's peaceful.
Yeah. I mean, maybe the ice box is metaphorical for like going into the process a little bit numb. You know what I mean? And then feeling warmth all around you once you're, actually experiencing. I don't know. That's the where my brain immediately went. I
You're the first time
don't
that
know.
you're the first time that anyone has tried to analyze that one. Like, I've not even
Well,
put forth that thought.
I mean, really? Like that would be like my first thought, honestly. I was like you said yourself actually. I was in an ice box. I don't know why. So you've obviously asked yourself that.
It's so funny because I'm not the type that tries to analyze why the dream happened, which is bizarre because normally I am that guy that likes to analyze things. I'm the guy that's like, that experience was fun. And I like, sharing that experience or telling people about that experience more than I do dissecting why it happened the way it did, which is just not not normally like me. But yeah, I've never really thought why the ice box and stuff. That's interesting.
Well, so like would you would you describe it as more of a visualization with your eyes closed or an actual dream state? Like were you
Yeah,
consciously having this thought, or this is exactly what was being played to you like a movie?
it is. Ooh, that's a good question. Um, it's almost like you're halfway asleep. That phase where you're like almost drifting out, but at the very same time, you can just open your eyes and be back up. Um,
Oh,
but at the same time, your sentence there about, is it like a movie that's being played to you? Yeah, you can walk in to a session with a ketamine session with an intention, but you can end up very much in left field. So it's almost like it's got its own current, but you could swim out of that current if you want to or if you need to.
interesting. Hmm.
Yeah. It's
So is it
very unlike any experience I've had.
so would you kind of call it like outer body? Like, are you seeing it from a third party perspective? Like, when you're in that ice box, are you seeing you in the ice box, or are you
Mm-mm.
inside the box?
There are people that have out of body, they see themselves. I don't think I've ever had that. And it's mainly because I would much rather see it from my own eyes more than anything. But it's sometimes it's shapes that you see and things that just can't exist in real life, kind of. Um, and it's just it's a very soft, smooth type of experience. And it's yeah, it's from my point of view. I've never had it from external, but I know people have said that they have.
Gotcha. So let me ask you this: how many treatments did you personally go through? Do you
I,
remember at all?
yeah, I did. So basically, the game plan is if you ever start ketamine therapy, you kind of have to budget on doing at least 6.
Okay.
And there's some scientific reasons why. But basically, what ketamine does is it creates a neurogenic effect in your head. And I'm not an expert by any means, but I'm just going to try to regurgitate it the best I can. But basically,
Yeah.
um, there's a psychopharmacologist that says it's kind of like, if you go down a ski slope and you do the same ski path year after year after year, you're going to harden that snow, and it's going to be like really compacted ice. Well, if you do either whether a psychedelic or something like ketamine, it's fresh snowfall that falls down and it covers up those hardened ice tracks. So that's good for the mind, especially for people that have had the same thought patterns over and over and over again of those negative depression, anxious thoughts. So, I've got this fresh snowfall in my mind. Well, it takes about 6 sessions to kind of really get that down, or at least get that fresh snow in your head. So I did 1 session. I did 4 weeks of 1 session a week. And then what I did is I did once every other week. And the reason why I did that is because I've never been on any psychiatric medications before. And that my brain chemistry is just softer because of that. Like I'm going to be more responsive to treatment more than likely, since I've never been on an antidepressant or something like that. So I did that 6 sessions, and I was doing great. And I had a bit of a backslide a couple months later, and that's a regression is pretty normal. But in total I've had 19 sessions, and I even have
wow.
a time. I even have a timeline on like what happened from when I first started to that regression that I had and when things turned around. Hey, by the way, it turned out that the reason I had a regression is I stopped supplementing a vitamin that I had a deficiency with. I was vitamin D deficient, and I was magnesium deficient, and I did not know that
Okay.
at the time. So if you look at my timeline of how things happened, like it lays over perfectly. So when I figured out what was going on with the vitamin D and magnesium stuff, like that was actually one. It was the key reason I was able to turn things around like I did and graduate from needing ketamine therapy treatment. Like
Gotcha.
I don't do treatments anymore. Once you start doing well, you do what they call boosters, and I've gone for like 2 or maybe 3 6-month boosters, but I don't feel a need to do it anymore.
Okay. And how much does this session cost? Like how much does this like one session cost?
Yeah,
I guess like, 6, whatever you have the
yeah.
ballpark for it.
So for my doctor's office, and again, it depends on the region. It was $350 per session, so it's not cheap. And depending on where you are, like there are some like places like Florida and New York, where it could be like upwards to $800 a session. That would have been obviously cost prohibitive for me. But $350 was pretty reasonable, especially if someone's insurance can cover that.
Okay.
Not always is that going to be the case, though. In fact, it's one of these things that, in my opinion, it should be covered by insurance, but they fight people on it. They literally will say, no, you start with psychiatric medication first, and then you change it if that doesn't work, and you change it again if that doesn't work, and then maybe we'll look to cover it.
Gotcha.
So I feel like that's a
So
flaw that we have in our system. But
so am I getting this right that you're saying that it was 350 a session? Now, did you have insurance?
so what I did was I knew that insurance was not gonna cover that just for my plan.
Mhm.
So I just said, no, this is gonna be an investment in myself. I had the funds to do it, which was something again. I I've always been a saver all my life. So
Okay.
I had the funds to do it. I'm like, look, this is going to be a check that I don't want to write, but if it's going to put me in the position where I can get my old self back, and if it's going to allow me to focus and be a better, a better person and just better in my career and what I was doing with my profession, then it's going to be totally worth it.
Yeah. Well, I'll say by some quick math in my head that you must have felt pretty strongly about what the results were going to be if you put down almost 7 grand on it. That sounds
Well,
about.
I'll tell you something. So it started off great, and I was doing really well. But when I had that regression again, I stopped supplementing some things I was deficient in that I didn't know I was deficient in at the time. It would have been helpful if I had gone to a doctor and gotten my blood work done and pushed to get a vitamin D test. That would have helped, but I just didn't do that. I did things out of order. I did things my way, which kind of cost me 7 grand. But but yeah, I know I can be a hard head. That comes from my dad. But there became a point after those initial sessions where I started to have that back, the symptoms were coming back of the depression. And I'm like, okay, well, I need to go in for another session. Hopefully it'll blow me out of the funk I'm feeling. So when I would go back and get a session, I wouldn't feel as low as what I would normally do. And to me, that was a win. However, I wasn't kicking it in the gear and doing like the work of staying in a routine and going to bed on time and, just going out and doing errands and stuff. Like I wasn't doing that as I once was when I first started. And that added to some of the confusing nature of my recovery. And it basically became something that I wouldn't say that I relied upon it, but I felt like at one point when I was starting to get kind of low again and regress, I kind of felt like I'm like, man, am I gonna have to like rely upon these things to not feel depressed and in a funk? And I didn't feel like I was ever physically dependent on it at all. But at the same time, I began to get worried that this is going to be the only thing that may be effective. And again, there's a money aspect to it,
Yeah. I mean, my brain's kind of running wild right now with things that I'm thinking slash thinking like questions that I have. But it's such a hard thing to call, right? Like where the true win was, because so from what it sounds like is that you went down that path. Uh, it definitely had its impact on you for sure, right?
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
the place you landed was that you should have just pursued a normal path to begin with, and then you would have never had to go through all that. Now, you would have just found that answer had you gone to a doctor, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think there's a little bit of proof to the theory that we talked about at the beginning of the podcast, and that's that when you start Googling things and going down a path of, hey, I feel like this, what's going on with me? And then you have like, WebMD or whatever, telling you, hey,
Yeah.
here's
Scare the crap out of you.
yeah, here's a list of 25 things that you might have. Um, you know, uh, it's I'll put it like this. That's a word to the wise to our viewers. To really maintain a normal health path, go see a general practitioner, get get physicals. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because like I'll put it like this, it might have been a beneficial experience for you, for sure, both in growth and spiritually and all these other things. And so I'm not
Mm-hmm.
trying to diminish from that, right? But it
Right.
also would have saved you a lot of time, energy, and money had you just gone, you know, the Western medicine route.
Right.
Not in the sense of anybody putting you on any kind of medication,
Right.
like for antidepressants or whatever the case would be. I'm just talking about where you landed. So tell our viewers what again, so they can understand, where did you land at? What was your problem?
So it was a vitamin D and magnesium deficiency. And so I'm gonna shed some light on this too. So um when I finally got into the doctor's office, and I started having a conversation with him about just kind of like, hey, look, I did this, therapy before, and I started to supplement it, and I think I'm vitamin D deficient, and I supplement magnesium with it. I was kind of giving him a run through of like what I had learned in the past 2 or 3 months, and how I started to have this turnaround, and I've had some symptoms resolve and stuff like that. And I'm like, I would like to have my vitamin D checked, please, along with doing a comprehensive blood panel. Does the comprehensive blood panel cover that? And he goes, no,
Yeah.
I don't. The comprehensive blood panel doesn't do that. Doesn't cover the vitamin D, and I don't think you need to do a vitamin D test anyways, because you shouldn't be deficient. And when he said that, it kind of sounded like that's not something that he looks for in 30-year-olds. So I kind of asked him, I'm like, well, do you normally order those? And he goes, no, not really. It's not something that is commonly going to be an issue for someone around your age, or at least it shouldn't be. And I said, okay, well, I'd still like to get it checked. So he put it in the system. And again, I was pretty knowledgeable because of research. Because again, I started to go down this rabbit trail of research once I figured out when I had such a fast turnaround, when I started supplementing vitamin D again, I had all these symptoms like quickly go away, almost like when I first started ketamine therapy. But where I landed was that, yeah, you should communicate with your doctor about what's going on. And even if worst case scenario, he talks to you about antidepressants, you don't have to take them. But if you do choose to take them, you don't have to take them permanently. You can use them as a tool to dampen the symptoms enough to kind of figure out what's going on. But what I would tell people is do research on what could be low, or what supplements are out, what minerals in your body and vitamins in your body may be low that may be causing the depression. And that's where the Two Buds One Shroom project comes in, because what we look to do is build these like resource centers that will help people start to, like, a lot of people are just wanting to know where to start to figure out why they're feeling out the way that they are. So we're a community where they can come in and we can just get them started and say, hey, look, check out this room about vitamin D that I've been working on over the past year, and just read up on it. And next time you go into your doctor and get your levels checked, if you're low, here's what you got to know about that. And
yeah.
The other thing too is when you do find you're deficient, let's just say you are deficient, and you meet your doctor and he goes, yeah, you're low. Here's a prescription for this stuff. I will say this, based upon my research and other experts that specialize in vitamin D research and that are doctors, they don't agree with how traditional Western medicine treats the deficiency. So I've got that data there. I'm like, hey, here's what the standard model is, but here's what these experts say. And the other glaring omission that I find, and I track people all the time on Reddit and just other people I've met throughout this journey, none of these doctors are talking to them about magnesium or potassium.
Gotcha.
And if you take the prescribed dose by these doctors, it can easily throw those out of balance. And if those get thrown out of balance, things get worse.
Okay.
So it's just stuff that I had to learn the hard way, and learn through research.
Yeah. I mean, aren't vitamin D and magnesium like the top major ingredients in like men's supplements, like Men's Health daily supplements and stuff like that?
It depends on the supplement. Yeah. And also sometimes when they make those, there's like 15 different types of magnesiums that you can buy. Sometimes their choice and the magnesium they use is not high quality.
Okay. So quality does make a difference, as with anything. Like,
quality. They call them forms of magnesium. And they matter. Like if we have a room on our Discord dedicated to magnesium, and if someone wanted to go to the Discord, they can just go to our website, twobuds1shroom.com, and just click on Discord. Okay. There's magnesium glycinate, and by the way, magnesium glycinate is popular because it does a great job of boosting your magnesium reserves, but it's not a fit for everyone because not everyone Some people have a glycine, um, sensitivity. But that's one of the types that's great at building your reserves. And then, citrate can do the job. It's just less bioavailable. So it doesn't boost your reserves as fast, although it can work. And then there's what is it called? L-threonate, which is, great, but the research on it isn't as robust as the others.
Okay.
So it's actually industry funded research. So they may have a bias in their findings. So it's just, stuff that we're still figuring out.
Do you know anything about this right here? I heard vitamins aren't FDA approved, meaning you may not know what's actually in it. Is that true? You ever heard
Yeah,
that?
there's some standards that are out there as far as like some certifications like CMP, certified supplements that are out there that will basically quality check, kind of like make sure that there's a kind of a standardized process that's up to the right quality to make sure that what goes in there. But yeah, without a doubt, in the supplement industry, sometimes if you buy like melatonin, it'll say 3 milligrams on the bottle, but when you actually send that to an independent lab and measure it, sometimes it's like double what it's actually in there. So yeah, you want to make sure that there's, some standards that go into this. And, sometimes, at least in my experience, like things have worked well for me. I tend to stick with what works well for me. And that's kind of our message here is like, find things that will work well for you. We're going to try to help, put the research out there as far as what you need to know before you make these purchasing decisions. But yeah, I mean, basically you're trusting these companies to be manufacturing something that's the right dose, the right quality, a high quality, etc.
Gotcha. I think that, the grand sum of the story is definitely is really beneficial for people to hear. You know what I mean? Um, Although, alternative medicine can have great effects. First off, I think that you had said something about it earlier where you spoke to the effect of that the way that one thing affects you might not be the same way it affects another person, right? So
Right.
anything like this, it might be the right thing for somebody and the exact wrong thing for another person, depending on where they're
Right.
at in their mental health and in their physical health and
Their
all
body.
these
Yeah.
other, yeah, variable factors. So, um, but despite going the atypical route, going the typical route seems to be you know the most fast and efficient way to get to the route of the source of the issue. You know what I mean? Um, and blood work would definitely be huge because then you can have things like those types of deficiencies identified by medical professionals. So
And I'm going to throw something else out there too. There's actually hair follicle tests. So the blood is great at kind of showing you what's going on literally right now. But when it comes down to minerals, apparently, like, if you get a hair follicle test, that's showing kind of what your body is putting out, and it's supposed to be a
gotcha.
better indicator for than at least for minerals, as far as what's kind of going on in the body. So things like potassium, copper, magnesium, things like that. And again, if you try to get a blood test for magnesium, which by the way, most people are deficient on, and it's good to get that corrected. That's the body's anoxiolytic, which means it helps you control cortisol and get a wrap under how you're feeling from an anxiety and sleep standpoint, etc. But only 1% of the magnesium is in the blood. The rest of the 99%, it's in your teeth and bones and soft tissues and organs and stuff like that. So
Gotcha.
that blood test is A, it's not often ordered, and B, it's just not telling you really what's going on. So you may have
Yeah.
to take that next step and get that special guidance from someone that knows how to read the hair follicle test, etc., to figure out what's going on if you're not feeling good and you're again experiencing symptoms, or maybe you just aren't feeling like you were 15 years ago. Like those are symptoms there sometimes. It was in my case.
Gotcha. So, like, is there a particular brand that you like gravitate towards, or is it all doctor prescribed?
Oh man. So, and I'm not saying that doctor prescribed stuff can't be the ticket, but again, from what I've learned, when they prescribe things like vitamin D, sometimes it's vitamin
Mhm.
D2, which is like you know, it's like plant-based. And there's vitamin D3, which is um it's more like, animal based, so to speak, even though that supposedly they do make like vegan vitamin D, but they give you those mega doses, and that doing the mega dose route, you can have side effects from. So, you know, prescription can be a way to deal with it. If I were diagnosed all over again with a vitamin D deficiency and the doctor said, "Hey, let me prescribe you a little something, something," I would not go the prescription route. And it's just because I would like a lower dose. So even if I did, I'd break up that tablet the best I could to do it low and slow and build up over the long haul. Um, as far as like brands, like, non-prescription stuff, like, is there any brands that I use? It can vary. There's no consistent brand as saying, "Hey, they are always good." Because there's
Yeah,
one brand that I really like for vitamin D. I like the quality ingredients, and it's worked well in my experience, and I feel great when I take it. But then, I bought their, vitamin B complex, and I started doing research after I bought it, and then I was pretty disappointed that the quality of ingredients in that same brand was not up to snuff.
gotcha. Interesting.
Like, yeah, they used some different things that can pose problems, and basically it's cheap stuff.
Gotcha. Yeah, I so it's it's funny when you don't need to pay attention when it comes to your health to the little things that could be big things. So, like for me, this past year, I abruptly decided to change my diet, right? And uh, I work at a food service establishment, like I manage a food service establishment, and so we have like tons of food all the time at your
Mhm.
fingertips. Makes you just want to eat whenever, stress eat, whatever the case may be. So
Yeah.
I'd ga- I'd gain what I thought to be enough weight where I needed to kind of like roll it back. And so I abruptly changed my diet and I cut a whole bunch of different sugars and stuff like that out of my diet.
Good.
Um, but then you know I got the exact result that I expected. Well, why not expected? I got the exact result I wanted, which was weight loss, but it came in the form of very rapid weight loss. And that's just because like even at 39, I still have like, pretty high metabolism. And so that change in diet, is the exact thing that made me lose weight so quickly. But
Right.
the rate at which I was losing weight, which it almost seemed like at times it was like pounds a day,
Yeah,
um,
that can happen.
it became concerning, right? But
Mm.
like, just like yourself, this was more of like a physical thing, but like if you think about the reverse chronology of it, like for me, I caused stress because of things that were going on with me physically that then I was chasing after an answer based off of questions that were digging for an answer, right? Not like
Yeah.
and big not like, open-ended questions like what could be the cause of this? Like what is the cause of rapid weight loss? And if
Right.
you Google what is the cause of rapid weight loss, it's going to tell you first and foremost the worst things it could be. Like,
Yeah.
you might have cancer, like you might have
Yeah.
this, you might have that. And then, you know, like same thing backwards, dude. And then I went and got blood work. And then, the blood work came back like clean, but I have high cholesterol and all these other things, but like it made me like, you know, think that there wasn't a major issue, but then maybe there was, but I just didn't find it yet. You know what I mean? But
Right.
really, and honestly, in all, it was just changing diet, you know?
Hmm.
And I caused myself all this mental stress and like going down these roads that weren't necessary just because,
Right.
I started Googling things and it got me worried.
That can get you.
You know, it's almost like, you know, it just comes back to like if you just talk to medical professionals first, so what they are educated and paid to do, it's probably a helpful place to start
Well, I
rather
will
than
say
just like
this.
defining. Sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna, and I didn't mean to interrupt. I will say this, that I like my doctor. I'll probably have to change my doctor because I think that he's falling short in a couple of things. I feel like there's not all doctors that kind of get it, so to speak. So you almost have to be careful to make sure that you are getting a doctor that is going to at least talk to you about a treatment method that you would like to go with. Like again, me personally, um, for pharmaceutical medications, I'm not anti pharmaceutical medications. I think that they are valuable tools and they can be valuable tools even on the psychiatric side. So antidepressants and even anti-anxiety meds, they're just necessary depending on what's going on in someone's life and their body, right? But for me, I'm like, I don't think this is necessary. Like, I really want to try to exhaust. Like, I know my diet sucks. I know my sleep sucks. I know I don't go outside. Things like that. I just knew that I could be making changes in those other areas, but it just was so difficult to be able to. Again, I was dealing with those rolling moods where I could have enough energy to stick with that routine. And again, I just, I feel like a doctor needs to be on board with you that, hey, look, here's what we're going to try before we do this, before we go the route of medications. And me personally, I don't think my doctor's exactly there. So again, I would like to find a doctor that is supportive of kind of going the path that you are kind of most wanting to at least exhaust first, if that
Yeah,
makes sense.
and I do think that there are absolutely good and bad doctors, and the good doctors will offer you alternatives. The bad
They
doctors
should.
they'll offer you the alternative that they've offered 575 other people, experiencing something that might sound a little bit similar to you, but isn't particularly about you. This is just what I've done in the past. It seems to
Mhm.
work. You know what I mean? And I think that like kind of like personal attention to your own personal issues and needs and concerns, about a particular route of medication or therapy or whatever the case may be, that's the good doctor because they want to feel like they want to know that what they're doing is going to help you in the ways that you want to be helped and not just, throw shit at the wall and hope it sticks.
Right.
Because that's
Right.
that's how you end up on something. And like, like let's say like you let's say you went antidepressants route first, not you, anybody. Okay.
Mhm.
You go antidepressants route first. And you were talking about at the beginning of the episode also about how despite the fact that it might be able to get you through something now, that there are long-term implications behind that in regards to the way that it
Can be.
changes your brain forever. Like I know this
They can
because
have it, yep.
I know people who are in my family or older adults, whatever the case may be, who've been on antidepressants for an extended period of time, and although it might help in one place, it's a lot of
Mhm.
times hurting in another. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, so, finding that happy middle is definitely smart. But I think that it's important to make short-term goals that you can accomplish that have long-term implications, right?
Mhm.
So a lot of times when people get put on something like Klonopins or, whatever the case may be, they'll stay on until, you know, somebody pulls that rug out from under them, whether it be insurance or a doctor. But I mean, once it's like you find something that's like, okay, well, this can help me get through the day. It's like,
Yeah.
all right, let's just stop there. It's good.
Well,
um,
people, I'm a big advocate for, you have to be your own advocate for your healthcare. And I kind of learned that before I went through my stuff with my dad, because that poor guy, he went through so much medically. He was Agent Orange exposed, which I don't know if everyone knows what Agent Orange is, but basically it's a chemical that they used in the Vietnam War, and he was severely exposed to that, and it wreaked havoc on his body as he aged. But you have to be your own best advocate, and one of the best ways that you could do that isn't fighting the system and assuming that all doctors are bad, because they're not all bad. I think our system has glaring flaws, but I think that one of the best ways that you can be an advocate for yourself is stop and listen to your body and what it's telling you. And it may even tell you, like, I'm tired today. And that's enough. And if there's enough of that that's happening every day, then your body's telling you, hey, something's wrong on the energy side, or maybe the sleep side. And I feel like that is a skill that people should, just pause a moment and begin to develop and remind yourself, even if you're not feeling bad, that may pay off in the long run for down the road. Because what if these small changes begin to happen and something is brewing underneath, and that maybe something like cancer, and it'd be good to catch that early if possible. So that's just something that I'd recommend that every person just be mindful of,
yeah. I feel like mental health's kind of like a car, right? Like you gotta do daily maintenance, which would be putting gas in it. So you gotta continue to refill your cup, right? And these are the things that you can do, outside of medication. So like,
Mm,
gotta continue to refill your cup, need period maintenance, and to have somebody check out what's going on under the hood once in a while. I mean, like,
yeah.
you know, um, and that's the way that you keep a car in good health, and that's the way you keep your brain in good health. And I think your story is really interesting, and you seem like you're a very well-rounded individual, now. I didn't know the Tim before, but
That's the first time
whatever the
I've heard
case.
someone say that. I'm just teasing.
But,
Um,
I didn't know the Tim before, but I know the Tim now, and every experience that I've ever had with you has been awesome and pleasant. So whatever you
Thank
were
you.
doing, you've made proper life choices and kind of went the correct avenues
Well,
to make sure that you're good.
and I'll tell you something, man. There was a time, again, I'm only 20 months into the feeling like myself again. Like 20 months ago,
Yeah.
I've got a picture of myself the week things turned around. And this is when I was doing ketamine therapy. And again, I wasn't going through the floor um in terms of how low I used to feel, but I was not in a good spot because I was losing faith in that ketamine therapy's effectiveness, right? But that week I took a picture of how I felt, like how I looked, and I knew I looked awful. And that picture I still got. It's like 20 months ago, I was in a spot that compared to now, like I would have never been convinced that I would be feeling how I am today. Like I feel like my old self, and to the point where I'm extroverted again. And I just thought I was becoming an introvert. That's where it really all started. Was I was sad because of the the passing of someone I loved, and that's kind of where it all started. And I just started to stay in more, and then I started to sleep less, and it's just like it just started small, and then the clouds got foggier, and then I got used to that fog to the point where I lost touch of how I should feel and how I should be. So when you say something like that, like, yeah, like you don't know how I was 20 months ago, because I was just on the struggle bus, man. So I really appreciate that.
Yeah. Well, look, honestly, show me the human that doesn't have at least a day of a week that they feel like they're on the struggle bus, man. It's just, you know, it's the controlled chaos saying. It's like that life won't always be perfect, but you just gotta try to control the chaos, you know.
Yeah. I
That's what
s-
it
s-
comes down to.
so we started a YouTube channel. I've only got 3 videos up, but I've got more coming. They're all going to be really good. Um, at the end of each video, I end the video the same way every time. And I just try to condense it because again, not every day is going to be, like talking about struggle buses and stuff, right? But not every day is going to be good. But I just keep, I say, um, keep doing the best you can, and then keep paying good things forward. Because I mean, that's all you can control is your effort.
Yeah, yeah. I like that a lot. And I think that's where we'll call it. I'm going to end
Yeah.
on your words, not mine. So I think I think that's a great takeaway. And yeah, really good advice. So Tim, thank you so
Look,
much for being on tonight, man.
yeah, man. Look, I'm so thankful that you had me on. I enjoyed it.
So your YouTube channel is
It's 2 buds, 1 shroom. So the number 2 and then the word buds, BUDS, and then the number 1 shroom. At this rate, I put out a video like every other week, but I'm trying to speed that up now that I'm getting better at video editing and I've learned lighting and all this other stuff.
Mhm.
It's been a lot to learn. But I'll talk about life stuff, and then what we're going to eventually do is have people on that have a story to tell. Like they've been through it themselves, and then I want to interview them and what they learned, and have it timestamp of like what they learned going through what they went through, because there's a lot of like just good life knowledge that you can learn from stories like these.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. I mean, I learned new things today for sure. It's been a really real awesome pleasure talking to you. And you did nail your setup, by the way. Your lights look great. Your audio is awesome. Uh,
Thank you.
and I'm really excited to see, the content that you guys put out in the future. And maybe, get some time under your belt. We'll have you back on the show. We can talk more psychology.
Yeah, let's do it. That sounds great.
All right. Sounds good, man. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks so much.
Have a good night.
You too.